So before we start, let's acknowledge the Wajak people of the Noongar Nation, the traditional custodians of the land that we've gathered on today. We all know that they've been here for more than 65,000 years of continuous culture and action, so it would be great to pay respects to the elders past and present and emerging. Today, it's an honour to introduce Louise Richardson, an accomplished WA-based artist and independent curator whose practice offers profound investigation into Australian rural identity and mythology. Working primarily in drawing using charcoal and graphite on cement fiberboard, her large-scale representations blend stark realism with stylized flattening perspective to heighten the emotional resonance of domestic objects, agricultural references, and natural world. Through themes of parenthood, intergenerational memory, and mentality, her work navigates the intricate relationships between humans and animals, with an underlying commitment to radical optimism. Her distinctive vision has been widely celebrated locally. Her major national touring solo exhibition, The Good, which interrogated the complexities of rural life in motherhood, and Watching, which was a collaborative project which explored preternatural communication with the natural world following personal grief. I was just ahead of her opening of the show Bird Years in Boston Flats. Tomorrow. Wow. So we're very lucky to have Anna here with us today. So please join me in welcoming Anna.
Do you want me to use this or is yeah? I can do that. Okay. Slightly different format because we're having technological problems, but I'm pretty sure I can just swipe. Not there. I live in the dark. So I was going to run you through just really quickly. That's a bit of an intro. Thank you, Ronan. I was going to start with curating and then talk about my practice and talk about collaboration. And I'm not going to talk about the ideas in depth. I'm going to go through how it happened, what it was, why I like the strategic reasons why I did that, and then kind of behind the scenes stuff. I'll be very honest with you, please ask me any questions, because sometimes I think you want to know, like, how did that happen? How did that artist get there? What were the opportunities that led to that? This was a picture of my studio, so let's just see if anything else will load. Oh, this is a video. This is the view from home, so I live, which is not that's fine. I live on Bindra in the country in the Peel region, so south of Perth, on a beef cattle farm. That's where I grew up. I now live there as an artist, and my commute goes across the backyard past these days. Right. I'll start at the beginning. This is the first show I ever curated. It was at Moana Project Space, which no longer exists, but it was in the city. And it came about because it came from my interest, so I'm really interested in farming, agricultural background, and really interested in art, and I wanted to combine those two things. And this show is called Worth Its Weight in Gold, and it was a riff off the sheep industry where wool was worth its weight in gold. And I wanted to look at those two things and had an exhibition of my work from art school. So I went to TAFE and then I went to Curtin, and this is my final year work, and I invited a bunch of other senior artists in to have a show together. I did all the organising, all of the grant writing. We got a grant from DLGSC at that point, is what it's called, to do this. And one of the things that was very different was we had a kind of interactive component to the exhibition. And we had a dinner party in the space once a week for 3 weeks. And we invited farmers, artists, and agricultural industry people. The artist gave a talk, the agricultural person gave a talk, and we invited 12 guests. All of this was made by an artist and furniture maker, and it was all made out of an old wool table. And one of the strategies for this show was we invited the directors and the curators of all the galleries around Perth, and they came because it was interesting and different. We fed them dinner. I asked artists who were way ahead of me in their career stage, and I started with the ones I had access to through university, and then I built from there. And one you can say, would you like to make this show? This person's already in it. And then these two people are in it, and then these people are in it. Here's a grant, I went for the grant, here's a fee, this is what's happening. So I make it as easy as possible for them to be a part of the show. And it was a success, and it was interesting and something that I hadn't seen before. These are some of the shots from talks, obviously like people I had access to. My husband is an artist, Abdullah Abdullah. So, you know, you use the people that you have around you to move forward. You already know everybody you need to know. Hello. Oh, look. Check it out. Casper. Perfect timing. So from there, I had it now to get thrown it up. I proposed an exhibition to Mock Projects, which is a project space that was part of Gallery Pom Pom in Sydney and New South Wales. A lot of these places don't exist anymore, and I guess that's part of the cycle in art. They stay around for 10, 20 years and then they change and there's new ones. So think of it as like similar type of space that exists now. They had a project space and you could take proposals, and I missed the proposal round, but I said, hey, can I propose an idea anyway? So I did, and what I proposed was this beautiful show with Casper Beckholz's work and two other artists from WA who were less senior than Casper and had all synergies between their work. It was called Plastic, and it was about the kind of malleability of fiction and reality in paint. And the gallery said, yeah, we'd love to have it, and we took everything that we could find in their studios that tied together as a strategic way of putting lots and lots of really beautiful work that they haven't seen in that commercial space in there. And because we had so much, and one of the other artists, it was part project space and part commercial gallery, the artist that was supposed to be the commercial side didn't have enough work, and we had way too much, so they swapped us. So we ended up being in the main space of the gallery. I mean, you can ask Casper what the experience was like, but I think it was a pretty good show. It was interesting, everyone sold some work. We built good relationships with the gallery and other peers and clients and the industry in New South Wales, and we got an art flight grant. They don't have art flight now through the state government, but they do have the SNAP grant, the Short Notice Arts Project. So it's sort of a similar thing to go along, and we hung it in a way where all the works were mixed up, but there were relationships between the visuals and the colour and the sight lines. And they were lovely to work with, Ian Louise and Dave Ledger as well. Okay. From there, let me just go to my notes. So this one was a really big project called, there's a major immersive show called We're Not Dead Yet, and it was at the Moores building in Fremantle. And it was about working with an underrepresented group in the arts. So there's lots and lots of older women emerging artists, but they're not seen as much in the exhibitions. Their representation in the institutions is low. And so I was part of a group of artists and designers that came out of being at TAFE. And from there, we called it Soup Collective, and we had shows and things for a while, and then that grew into this group of women who were all coming into their arts practice at a later stage of their life. They'd all had careers in other areas. I'll be completely open with you, my mum was also an artist in this group. She's the furniture designer maker who made this table. So my career coincided with her career becoming a designer after being a vet and a farmer for many years. We actually went to TAFE here doing three-dimensional design with Pete Hadley over there. I was in the first year, when she was in the third year. It was quite fun. We have different last names too, so no one knew. There was just what's that weird relationship between you guys. You're like really close. We can't do it. So we did this big exhibition. There were 6 artists, and we transformed the space into a home. And you can see there's all this sort of prop furniture in the space. And it looked at, taking over the space for emerging older women artists. We had a big symposium as part of it. We had a high tea. We had a lot of events that got funding through it, and I pitched it as me as an emerging curator working with this area that there is not as much representation of. And the symposium was like 50 women and 2 men. But it was a really interesting discussion. I invited curators and artists from the East Coast to come over and talk as part of the symposium, and therefore we got to connect with them as well. So like Polixeni Petru came over, Megan Monty came over, but it is recorded, and they do have it all posted on my website if anyone's particularly interested. And it was fun to be able to really interact with that space and change it. It's a fantastic gallery. It's an extremely challenging gallery, but it's also very accessible to do something and make your mark in that space and can apply and hire it. So it's wonderful that it has such a long history too. Something that I think really is challenging when you're showing areas or spaces like this is if they don't last very long, you lose that lineage, you lose that history of that space. Like Curve, everybody showed a Curve, and it was for many, many years it existed, and it became an institution that you all understood. But if your gallery only lasts for 2 years, it doesn't have that knowledge across the sector. So I think a place like Moore's really is fantastic for that. Talk about another type of curatorial opportunity. This was part of Next Wave Festival, which is an emerging artist curators festival out of Melbourne. They had opportunity to apply to their emerging curators program, which I did as a collaboration with another artist. And we, at that stage, in 2016, they partnered curators with venues. So we partnered with Arts Project Australia, which is a supported studio for artists working with a disability. And we did an exhibition which was all about a kind of exquisite corpse of a narrative. And then these are all the artists who all had to dress up part of the narrative. This was one of the artists' work, and it was pairing senior artists with artists from Arts Project Australia and working together. So once again, being quite strategic with who you're working with and kind of taking the opportunity as a way to jump forward and work with people who are much further ahead in their career and expand networks. So like Richard Lure, Catherine Hatam, and where Kate, I've forgotten that, slipped my mind. Makes the beautiful textiles works. Kate Just, that's her as Homer Simpson. And then, I think I've skipped one, no. Another sort of curatorial thing was the Here and Now exhibition, which was based at Lawrence Wilson Art Gallery, and it was for emerging West Australian curators to make a show with West Australian artists. So I was walking down the corridor one day and I passed Ted Snell, and I said to him, "Hey Ted, I'd love to curate that show one day." Just, off the cuff. And then about a week later he went, "Would you like to curate Here and Now? We're going to do it." And it was really specific. It was like the 50th anniversary of Marcel Duchamp's death. And we want to do an exhibition that relates to that because there were links between WA and the exhibition that was at Aqua, like all these different things. And I just went, yeah, that sounds great. I think you can ask for stuff in jest sometimes and also seriously, because it's much harder for people to say no than it is to offer it off out of without knowing. Also, they don't know you're interested. And maybe they're looking for somebody and then they go, actually, you're perfect. So I always say to people, ask for stuff. And I go to these talks and I say, ask for things. And then people ask me for things. And I go, well, I can't say no now because you've asked me. So it does work. And we did an exhibition which connected West Australian artists with the legacy of Duchamp and actually really critiqued it. And it was a very interesting exhibition response. This is Perdita Phillips' work, and there's a collector in WA who has a lot of Duchamp's ephemera, so we were able to access that and use it in the exhibition. It was fun to play with that idea because he's a very radical artist, but there are a lot of ways to kind of critique his depiction of feminism and a lot of his ideals. So it was a great working ground with the artists and a supported program to do that. Julie Dowling, Peter Cheng and Molly, that's Bill Rainer Adamson, Alex Bremberg, this thing's amazing. And they spin, and so Duchamp. It was a perfect artist for that show too. Another opportunity as a curator, one of the other jobs that happens regularly was the Peak Salon. You know how they have their, I think it's changed a little bit now, but there's a lot of regular sort of slots that roll around, and it was their show each year for fundraising. So they wanted artists to come in and for the patrons to be able to purchase the works and things. So there's kind of a brief for the exhibition. and they asked me to do the show, and it meant I actually had the opportunity to go back to artists I had worked with before as well, which is a really nice thing to do as a curator. And as an artist, when a curator does that, it makes the world of difference for them to support your career multiple times. So like Ian Williams is in this exhibition, and because of the standing with the gallery, it allowed me to invite artists that I had only ever dreamed of working with, like Helen Britton, and then people that I have met across the career. So like, you know so many people in the arts and you already know them. Now, and every time you go to a show and you meet someone, you kind of clock in who they are for the future. Like, all artists love opportunities to show their work. And as a curator, like, sometimes it takes a long time to get them into an exhibition, but there's Hoda Afshar, Max Pam. It was really great to be able to work with all these different artists and to offer them an opportunity for it to be directly sales. Like, the idea is that patrons buy the work too, which was really nice. And so Pika, Nicole and Bruce Slatter, Bruno Booth, Bruno. And then this is the last curated one. Because I'm regional, because I'm a curator, and I've been doing it for a little while, I had become known as someone who does that. And then the opportunity came up through a very convoluted process with Regional Arts WA to do this big push started in 2026, and then not 2016, and then in 2018 they had this program where they wanted to do a big exhibition that involved the entire region of WA, and it was the Regional Arts Training. It was one part of this massive Regional Arts Partnership program. And so Fiona Sinclair, who's from Southern Forest Arts down in Northbridge, thank you. All my notes are in here. She said, hey, would you like to write a brief that artists across the state can respond to and then have exhibitions in their local communities and about that one brief, which is a really interesting proposition to go, how do you connect artists from Kununurra and Broome to artists way out in the desert, to artists in Kalgoorlie, to artists like Mandurah, to Esperance, like they're also different spaces to work in, to be in, what's the connecting factor? So I said, yeah, I'd love to do that, that sounds really interesting. And I thought it would be a brief and that's it. It became a huge exhibition that became the Regional Arts Training. They're doing their third one this year. And from those regional exhibitions, from the brief, I became a mentor of all the curators in the regions doing those shows. And then it became a show that would have a survey exhibition at John Curtin Gallery. And I curated that, and then we toured it back out to the regions and other rooms. So it just became this thing that grew and grew and grew, but we started to know that's where it would be. We didn't know that it would be a training. We thought it would be a pilot program. But it was a really amazing opportunity to challenge some of the things that I didn't realise and thought about regional practice. You know, there are way more artists out there working in the regions who are amazing practitioners than I had thought. And going out and experiencing, so I went out with Chris Markham, the then director of John Curtin Gallery, to all of the regions, to all of the galleries, and met all of the artists, doing everything for the artists, and really interesting to know. And I think that's one of the things that really lacks, especially like we feel it in WA, but in regional WA we feel it even more. We don't have access to the peers, we don't have access to the networks in the industry and that kind of exchange. Just them knowing who you are and what your work is makes a huge difference. So it was a fascinating process, and then I am now involved in that as the curator at John Curtin Gallery doing the survey exhibition this year as a contract. So that's a very different process, and I'm not sure I'm used to working in a job anymore. So it's been quite interesting to deal with the kind of administrative, technological workload and the fact that you don't have to do it when you're working in a team. Whereas when you're an artist or a curator working independently, you're really used to doing absolutely everything. So it's been an interesting process, but I can't wait to kind of see it come together. Okay, making. That's curating. Let's talk about making. There's some shots of the studio, just have to imagine what it looks like from the outside. And it's not loaded. Oh, I've made my work. There we go. probably going to be too small for you guys. This is it. Less than perfect, but can you see that? Yeah, I can see. I know, me too. Look, I don't know how to fix it. I'm very sorry. We'll do it like this. You're welcome to come forward if you want to. Please do. With my work, can you see? So we're going back to the beginning again. I started with what I was passionate about. I grew up riding horses, I loved horses, really interested in them, and this is some of the first work I made out of art school after the shearers, and I wanted to start with the things that I loved, and I actually painted my horse gold and used the reference image from that to make this story. And I wanted to look at our relationship between, which is something I still do now, humans and animals, and how we treat animals, and different animals mean different things to people, and our relationship with them really affects our meaning. Animals can stand in the human emotions and experiences. We're able to kind of look and talk about things in a different way, like death, which we'll get to, through the lens of animals. So I started off with horses, and I wanted to look at why do we treat horses we put them more on a pedestal in terms of a farm animal than we would an animal that we eat, like sheep, cows, but they kind of operate in the same realm. They're still tax deductible if you live on a farm. And I wanted to play with that, with collage and charcoal. This is this is a motif that you'll see again. I love playing with different materials in the work. So this is a glitter ground, like when you're a kid and you put glue on the paper and you sprinkle the glitter on. I still do that with my work. And it makes it into this kind of otherworldly magical space. I'm really interested in exploring those ideas. And I went from the horses and my experience of horses, and that's really thinking about our relationships to them as, are they just another farm animal? Are they a really revered animal? Why are they so important? They really draw people's heartstrings. So a lot of people are afraid of them, a lot of people have a lot of love for them. Like, what about looking at more of a cultural phenomenon of horse? Like, this is far out. These are life size too, so they're 3 meters by 3.2 meters. They're on the big strips of the cement fiberboard. I love to work in cement fiberboard. It's most of you would know it. It's a hardy panel. It's a building material. You can get it from Bunnings. It's utilitarian. It's pre-toned. It's a fiber product, compressed fiber product. So it's basically paper. It's much more sturdy though, and I love the kind of textural. It's like a really heavy watercolour. You can't draw detail, thin lines on it. It's too rough. I love it. It's very heavy. It's very brittle, but it allows more possibility. And I was looking at father and the kind of legend of father, and why are we still fascinated with this horse? It's one of the most valuable things in the Melbourne Museum's collection. In the museum collection, they have a huge collection of First Nations artefacts, cultural objects. Why is this the thing where they're like, protect father at all costs? It's a horse hide, and he's not even a very nice looking horse. So it's like, why is he important? And I was really interested in that, and the idea of when he died under mysterious circumstances. So father, very famous racehorse, won a lot of races, died really early in America, and there was a lot of conspiracy theory about what happened. They then stuffed him and articulated the skeleton and paraded it around race tracks all over the world. And then it also brought into that Australia-New Zealand divide, because it's a New Zealand horse, but Australia claims it's their own, so it's kind of culturally an interesting discussion as well. And the skeleton is in the Museum in Wellington, and the hide is in the Melbourne Museum. The heart is in Canberra, and then there's a whole other story about how they cut out a part of the heart to study, and then they lost it. And then in 2014, they found it in the museum stacks. So there's so much within one horse. And then, the memento mori, the kind of examining each other, the scale of the horse, and looking at the Edward Northbridge running, moving photograph strips. So there's lots of things going on here. But there's some more detail. This background is that water-soluble charcoal ink, which is a really interesting material to work with as well. Also, life-size animals are about death. So this work was about, so I want to talk about personal stories then with animals. This work was about two bulls we had that got struck by lightning when I was a kid, and we had to get them autopsied because they were insured, but my mum couldn't do it because she would have been a conflict of interest for her to do the vet work on the autopsy. But it was the first time I really saw inside an animal, and inside an animal that big, I remember feeling quite sick, but also being fascinated by like the size of a lung in a bull was like huge, and we got to touch it all, and the liver was huge. It was really interesting. And I remember asking, "Can we cut the head open?" And they just said, "No, it's too hard." Also about me too, but it was really fascinating for me. And I drew this work at a time when my mum got sick, and we were looking at what does that mean for the future of like a family farm? What does that mean for the lineage of being on the land? And then I didn't really realise till later that I'd made a work about the massive fissure. So, and looking at the idea of knowing and unknowing. When you know something really well, you turn the lights off at night time, you don't know anymore, and that one post in the paddock, you run into it in the car, even though you can find your way around the farm in the back in daylight whenever. I play a game with Abdul Rahman where he'll go out and farm with kids, and he has to send me a photo, and I have to guess exactly where it is and send him a map pin. It's so much fun, but I couldn't do it at night time. Like everything changes when the dark comes down. So we've gone starting with passion, expand into animal phenomena, cultural significance, death, knowing, unknowing, uncertainty. Now we're going to Earth. So when I had my first child, I mean, many of you know if you've got kids in the room that it completely changes you, and it can be very destabilizing as an artist, as an identity, what happens now, who am I, all of those questions. And so I gave myself a project, and I went, I'll make one work a month for a year, for the first year of her life, and I'll just know that it will be about, at some point this month, something will happen with an animal, and I'll make a work about that. It'll be in a field of glitter. And so I made 12 works over the year, and they were part of an exhibition at Fremantle Arts Centre called Animes, which some of you might have seen, which was for kids. They designed an exhibition for child audiences, like all the work and labels here, the works were all hung low, the walls were colourful, the labels were all for kids, which meant they were really great for adults because they distilled ideas into really understandable themes. They invited heaps of artists. They got 50,000 people through that show. That's a lot, and it's fantastic. Kids would engage with the work, and because these all had months that they were made, they were like, "Oh, that's my birthday month. That's my artwork. That's my picture. That's my animal." So it's a really great way of thinking about who are your audiences, who you want to reach, how do you want to reach them in a different way. Because kids are a massive arts audience. People take their kids to the gallery. It's one of the only free things that you can do, and it's great for them. All those things. But this is the first show I'd ever seen that went, "You are our focus." And then invited lots of really senior artists to make work, and people were excited by it. Ross Potter's giant elephant was in that show too. Okay. The second part of parenting is fear, right? Yes.
Those are on the screen.
Oh, thank you. Just look at my little baby face. Way better. There she is.
Was this your drug?
Yes. So from there, I started looking at, one of the things I didn't realize about being a parent was that how much you would worry about things and the kind of fear associated with being a mum and being a parent. And this was made large, all of the things that I worried about that could harm my child, and I wanted to make them into objects that could put that presence in my mind on the wall. So the knife is 2 meters long. I don't like power cords. I don't know about you guys, but I switched them off the wall before. I'm one of those people. So like a nest of power cords to me is a very frightening thing. A squash pad, or we have a lot of snakes in our garden. So like snakes was something that I spent a lot of time thinking about. Rucksack, all those things that just don't really cross your mind as much until you have small people who are trying to, you have to keep them alive. And they were installed onto a wallpaper that I had made of everything I had ever drawn to that date. So it's like my life until now. And I think this is the first time that I really played with scale, making things larger than life to make their presence, their emotional presence, bigger. I don't know what to play on here. So that exhibition was at Gallery Pom Pom. So now we've circled back. Because I worked with them through mock projects with Casper and Ian and David, and it brought, I got to know them and I really liked them, and I went, hey, I'd love to work with you with my own work. And they said, yeah, we would. So they already had that relationship and that connection. So then I did a show with them. And from there, a curator from Maitland Regional Art Gallery saw this exhibition and got in touch with me, because in 2020, like, we were in Sydney right when COVID happened and everyone went, so the director there saw my show and went, would you like to show it here? We've got an opening because everything started getting cancelled and one of the artists pulled out and then an opportunity. And I went, I'd love to show this and all this other work. Look, I've got all this work, and I made it really easy for them. I went, here's a spreadsheet with like every information about it. I got a freight quote. I went, can we have like a mini retrospective? This is the like 5 years of practice. This is what it's all about. I gave them a kind of idea of what it could encompass. And they went, yeah, sure. You know, so it went from re-showing one thing to having an entire big show. This is a video. We'll start in a second. It's a quick video. So it was called When Night Falls, and I mean, they seem obvious in hindsight, but often that's what a curator is fantastic for, is to look at your practice and be like, well, this connects to that idea, and clearly you're exploring through this process. I mean, I make work that's based in identity and figurative things, so there's some really key connections, but you can look back at anyone's practice and draw parallels. And so I did it to my own and offered it to them as a way of kind of pushing forward with an opportunity. I couldn't go. It was the saddest moment of my career not to be able to go and see that, because it's the biggest thing I'd ever done. And it was the exhibition that led to the good. So you can see there's a trail, right? So then the curator for the good is the touring show that Ryan mentioned at the beginning, and it's a solo exhibition of my work that's touring regional centres around the nation. It started in 2023, and it did 11 venues in 4 states, and now it's been picked up by Art on the Move, and it's doing an additional 4 in WA. It's been fantastic. It's so the curator of a tiny gallery in Brisbane. I'm going to flick forward and I'll come back to the good. A curator of a tiny gallery in Brisbane who used to work for Museums and Galleries New South Wales, which is their touring body, like Art on the Move here, every state has a version, saw the show at Maitland and went, ooh, would you like to show that here? And I went, no, I want to do an entirely new show, this is the idea. And she went, that sounds great. And so then we built from there, and the process was like, at that stage it was a show in a tiny gallery, we had no funding. You know, the town is Toogoolawah in the Brisbane Valley. It has 1,200 people that live there, but the council recently spent lots of money redoing the gallery, and it's this architectural kind of wonder of an old condensed milk factory, and it's part of... So it was an interesting thing, and they had a good curator go up there. And so I said, no, I want to do an exhibition about finding the good things in life. And then from there, when things look really hard, you know, let's look for the silver linings, basically. And it was sort of post-COVID and I'll go back to those works, but after my mum died, and I made work about that experience, and then I wanted to make works that kind of looked for radical optimism and looked for lifting, because I didn't want to make more work about being sad. And the show was really specifically regional perspective. The exhibition, the curator, Rachel Arndt, then asked the curator of Wagga Wagga Art Gallery if she would co-curate it so they could apply for New South Wales touring funding, because they had to have a New South Wales link to apply for the organisation she used to work at, right? So we're connecting the dots. They got that, then that organisation applies for funding through Creative Australia to get Visions funding to tour it. 2 weeks before the show left, I had no idea, left the studio, if it was going to be a once-off or a national tour. So, it was quite difficult to financially plan for that. Am I making this massive crate? How much input am I putting into this? But it became something that was really great. I will also say I went for a Regional Arts Australia Fellowship, which they still have, and there's the state-based one as well, to make the exhibition. And there were a lot of caveats of it's this show, but it might also be this tour. Look at this nice letter that says, we'd love to tour it. We're really interested in it. Nothing said confirmed. We're really, really interested in this idea. We really want to. So you can apply for opportunities that have unknowns if you still have those letters that indicate the desire, I think. Is one of those things. So I tried to tick every single box without actually knowing if those boxes would ever happen. So the works are about finding the good things, and the old banana could be that you've missed that opportunity, or it could be that you can make banana pancakes, banana bread, we eat jumper, which are like fried banana and coconut dumplings. The stack of ties, there are deliberately only 3, but still good. That idea is still good, should be right. You keep them just in case next time you need one of them, even though no car ever seems to have the same tyres. These are from those farm cars. So you keep every little bit. It's that idea of reusing, recycling, especially coming from a rural background. Nothing is ever thrown away. The one thing that all farms have is space. They keep absolutely everything. The wrinkly old passion fruit is actually the sweetest one. You never buy that one from the shops. Buy the fattest one you can get. The shipping container, because I live on a farm where the kids are the 7th generation, every single thing that was ever once important or considered good goes in there, never comes out, no idea what it is, has no instructions anymore, but I know it's in there. If I've seen something, I know it's still here, so I'm endlessly optimistic that it's in there. I just go in there for inspiration sometimes. I'm just always like, what are you doing? I know it's here, I can find it. The 2 shovels by the back door, for some time, anyone who's grown up in the kind of outskirts or regional would know why you have those. Getting some nods. The beauty of weeds, they're very polarising, but they're actually a beautiful thing, like cape weed, turns the paddocks yellow. There's the banana. Also big, playing the scale. One thing that was amazing with this exhibition is because of all the support that ended up happening is they developed education packs, mediation handbooks, so that the gallery guides have all the talking points about the show, which is fascinating to have produced about your own work. And they did a catalogue, and I got all these photos taken along the way. And something strategic that I did even before I knew it was going to tour was I got halfway photos taken because I wanted to have things to promote the show with. So Beaumont was my absolute go-to. Very sadly, she's tired. Very unhappy with her. So find your person, and I would highly recommend getting midway photos from a project. Because you want photos of you in the studio, you want photos of you working that are relevant to this project. You want things that you can early promote, because you've often finished some things halfway through a project, you just haven't finished everything. And then I got them at the end, and because one of the things I want to do as being an artist parent is promote programs for kids and having fair access for artist parents and kids, and so we do lots of programming. I wanted to do shots for that, and they did a video for kids. We've got an activity that came out with fly spots and flies that relates to the show. So all of that kind of thing gets packaged up by the touring organisation. There's so much great information in there. It was really interesting to be a part of that. And this is look, I edited this, it's not very good, but it's showing you a bit behind the scenes. Please come forward if it's hard to see, I don't mind at all. Of how I make these. This is the extent of preliminary sketches or ideas. Thinking about scale, there's a lot more ideas than I ever got to. I'm really optimistic about how much work I can make. I take my own reference photos as much as possible, showing you the kind of drawing process. I like to take process photos along the way. I sometimes post them on social media as like a how to draw. It's a bit of a joke because it's not a how to draw, but if people love to see the behind the scenes of artist practice, I think it's really interesting. Something I found quite interesting as well is I have a gallery now, and he said often clients will ask him, can you send me the real photo? Like you send them your beautiful studio shot or everything's nice, and they go, I want to see a photo of like the artist in it, I want to see a photo of behind the scenes, I want to see what it really looks like in the flesh, which is an interesting idea. So like these kinds of things are really important for that as well. People want to understand how something's made. That's about the potato that is very optimistic in the cupboard that tried to grow through this grew hole in the cupboard into the next one, and the forgotten potatoes now in the garden making more potatoes. I use a projector to get my scale because I work big, and I often use it to help me make decisions. So I don't do preliminary sketches because I decide on the wall. And often those decisions are practical, like how much of that material have I actually got? Can I build a crate with it? If I'm using a full sheet of something, I need a full sheet to make a crate for the thing, so it has to be smaller. I still get that one wrong all the time. I would go, how am I going to package it? And then I'm going to make the size so it fits in the package. Instead of making the size, I'm going, oh shit, how can I package it? So, like starting backwards, writing drafts helps with that process because you plan. You go, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do it, this is how much it's going to cost, this is when I have to do it. And then you go, oh, I need to think about that thing, I need to think about that thing. So even if you don't get the project, you're ready to do it. Just showing you the different ways. This is my favourite thing to draw because there's barely any detail, and I'm mostly used to tissue because of the shiny stainless steel. Okay, I'm conscious of time. I'll read the words. This was my most recent show, and it's looking at that idea of the light and the dark, the good and the bad, when things might be considered bad, but there's beauty in them, looking at those kind of dichotomies. So these are all invasive weeds, and I wanted to look at the beauty of them and their allure, even though they represent kind of like a recolonisation of space. So often when you drive in the country, you can see a palm tree, but nothing else. You go, there was a house there once, but the palm tree or the oleander or the lavender or the prickly pear is the thing that's maintained and has then recolonised and growing, and that kind of is an indicator of previous colonisation. I want to look at all of those ideas, but deliver them with a package of beautiful work for a commercial show in the Southern Highlands in New South Wales, which is like quite fancy and maybe slightly dig at those ideas of like everyone has agapanthus, but a lot of people know agapanthus is a very polarising plant because it's also a declared weed. You get fined for having these at home. Yes. Yeah, people love it or hate it, or maybe don't know anything about it. But yeah, like you get fined for having this on your property, but you can buy them for money. So there's a lot of things that I wanted to look at, but packaged up in a commercial exhibition, the monarch butterfly, symbol of like beautiful, untouched nature. It is invasive. It is not a native animal, but it's very interesting because does it have any impact? Don't know. Does it displace any other insects that would do that job? It only lives on milkweed and cottonbush, which is an invasive weed, but it itself is a product of that invasion. So I wanted to look at all of those ideas, but through the lens of beautiful, snails. These were very popular. People really like these. I could have sold these many, many times over. I'm going to do my next show, just insect cutouts. Just snails.
What about a snail?
People want to buy giant snails. Just a real surprise. About this big. I was nervous about it. I sent a picture to the gallery and said, look, I want to do this work. Is it too weird? No, I really love them. So I thought it was quite interesting. Beautiful giant flowers, yellow iris, they're really, you can buy them from florists. They're valuable, but they're also, we have to take them off the farm when we get fined. So it's really interesting double standards. A bit of the behind the scenes. This is how I cut out my work at the moment with the jigsaw. It's really hard work, but don't make a cement blade for the jigsaw, so go through a lot of blades. I'm going to start looking into getting them CNC cut. Just have to convince someone to cut cement. So most people don't want to do it with some blunt things. So we'll see. That's my next challenge. I am 11 years in and I finally found the fixatives that I like. I don't know council, but I am really resistant to change. People suggested this to me for 3 years and I was, no, I can't change anything. This is the finished thing. You're not going to touch your work with something new. Anyway, it's Degas Spectrafix. It's casein and alcohol. It is not toxic. It's amazing. And I can do this on my drawings now and nothing comes off. It's a really, really good product. Please don't buy it all. Packaging things for the touring show, and then everything had to go in its own crate and then into a big crate. I'm kind of working out the Tetris and then doing little diagrams of how you put it all back in together, sending videos of how you hang and take things off the wall. So kind of thinking about how would someone receive this who works in a regional gallery who, their installers may not be professional installers who've done this a lot. So just thinking about how to make that as easy as possible. That's the crate. I'm really quickly going to talk about collaborating. As I said before, my husband's an artist as well. We met at art school, and we have a lot of similar interests. Aberdeen Street makes sculptures of animals. Very different position coming from. His cultural background is very different from mine. His experience is very different, but we arrive at the same animal with very different meanings. That's the other reason why I love working with animals, is you bring whatever it is you know, feel, respond to about that animal to the work. And then you could also read the label and find out what I think about it. But you bring your own stuff to that. And I think that's what's really beautiful about them. So we did this exhibition about preternatural experiences with animals. So wherever we are on the farm, an animal is always watching us. Or probably many animals. I mean, even in the city, you'll be watching birds, spiders, there's always something else that can see you and you can kind of feel it. So we wanted to do this show about that idea. This was an exhibition at West Space in Melbourne. They asked Dr. Rahman if he wanted to have a show, and he went, I'm really busy, but could we do a collaboration? So, he supported me to do that as well. And then we pitched it to Fremantle Arts Centre and said, hey, do you want to tour this show? And then we added to it. So then it became a show that had more than those works in it. And a bit of a retrospective. It was a really nice first show in our hometown as well, because the audience has grown from here. And we expanded on that idea with previous works that looked at the same ideas, because when you're an artist, you often repeat ideas and come back to things from different lenses. Similar story, the TILT program, which is for West Australian artists, site-specific, commissioned to respond to the Woodcutter, Heathcote, Surrounds and Gallery. Great program, long-running, excellent. They invited us around and he went, this has been really busy. He said, I really can't commit to it, but do you want to do a collaboration? Would you like both of us? And we pitch it as a show for families, about families for kids, we have a big component for kids. It's got a playground at the gallery, it's a no-brainer for that space. And they said, yeah, we'd love to. So then that's how this exhibition came about. And we made work about birds and birds that thrive in spite of humans and around human habitation. And they're the ones that the welcome swallow and the seagulls, they're the ones that are so close to you that you also revile them in a little way. They're called pests. So, and I was really interested in the idea that birds have social structures and big families, and they're very similar to humans in a lot of ways. But we find them aspirational because they do the one thing that humans could never do, which is fly. Same as sea creatures, we're fascinated with them in a very different way. We don't have dominion over them like we do with the land animals. So I'm really interested in those ideas. And wanted to look at them in family structures and parenting. So I made a series of works as a nest. The swallows, they acquire something from every tilt show, so we were very strategic in how that might work as well. And they were going to buy this one, and then they decided they would buy all of those. So it was very good, and now it's in the Melbourne Library. But thinking about what is it about this show that might be appropriate for the collection of that gallery. So a lot of galleries have a collection, like institutions, but they have a remit around that collection as well. So I wanted to make sure that each work was individual and within a price range of what they would buy. In the end, they decided to buy more than that, but I knew they would buy something. So I didn't make $100 works. I made work that was strategic for that as well as keeping to the idea. We made space for kids to engage with the work in the behind the scenes of the project, and our daughter drew this little bird on the wall. Just one last thing. We've done some curatorial collaborations as well. This was Dead Centre at Spectrum Project Space, and then it toured with Art on the Move. And we did this exhibition. We asked artists that we knew, who are our peers. We asked artists in Western Australia and artists around the country. We went for quite senior artists. We had an idea that tied them all together about identity and looking from the centre outwards and making themselves in the centre. We asked artists here for framed existing works. We asked artists in the East Coast for video works that they could send on USBs. We made it as easy as possible for people to be involved, and they all said yes. And we also, one of the works in the show, we have a Tony Albert, which we had in our collection, because artists swap with each other. Artists can't afford their own work, but a lot of artists have editions of things around. So artists have amazing collections because they have friends who are artists. And when you get collectors who come over, they're like, how do you have that? We know them. It's a way that you can also make use of that. So this work here, we built a show around it, and it became a really amazing thing for those artists to be involved in because it made it so easy for them. That would be my recommendation, is you know what you want to be involved in an exhibition. You know what the conditions are that you'd like to work with. So if you're asking someone to do something, offer them those conditions, or offer them as close as possible that you can get to that. That's it.